Hey guys, Troy Francis coming at you from Italy in Milan. This is the Piazza Duomo di Milano. Very, very beautiful. You can see the Duomo itself behind me. We are stood in the middle of this vast square with wonderful architecture. And listen, every time I come to Italy, I was here last year, I went to Rome, where I hadn't been for many years, and then we went down to Positano. And every time I come to Italy, I'm just blown away by the beauty of the architecture, the culture, just the dramatic nature of their art, and it's just a fantastic place. Anyway, enough of that, because what we're here to talk about is not Italy's per se, but modern dating, and specifically whether it's possible to actually create a long-term relationship with a woman in her prime in 2023 going into 2024. Is it even possible to create a relationship? And by that I mean a longer term kind of lasting thing that goes on for more than a couple of weeks and a few booty calls here and there. My contention is that increasingly it isn't. Now, I do have to caveat this because, of course, it depends on the nature of the woman that you are interacting with. What I'm talking about here is basically a very high level of woman, okay? A woman who is probably between the ages of, say, 19 to 24, 25. She is an international sort of person, so she may not be living in the country where she was born. She certainly travels a lot. She may work as an influencer, or at least she might have a very large social media following, lots of very sexy pictures and things like this. I mean, I say sexy, not necessarily in a crude way, but she's got to be, we're talking about a decently attractive woman here, okay? We're not talking about Sandra who works in Publix or whatever, you know. We're talking about an attractive woman who is somewhat used to the high life globally, okay? Now, these are the kinds of women that we are dealing with regularly, okay, myself, Tusk, and the other guys that I work with. And if you join our Edge program, you will learn how to do the same thing. We're not talking about mediocre dating. We're not talking about living in a small town and dating somebody from the local Greg's, you know, Greg's bakery store, okay? We're talking about doing this at a higher level, right? So when I talk about these elite level women, I'm talking specifically about that higher tier, okay? The kind of the Instagram girls, you know, the girls that people aspire to, right? And you presumably aspire to as well if you're watching this content. Is it even possible to get into a relationship with one of those girls? Well, here's the thing. We've talked before about the so-called glass ceiling in dating, the glass ceiling of money. Now, some years ago, people would say to me, well, you know, Troy, it's all about looks in dating. That's obviously been done to death, but people would also say, well, it's all about money. And I never really believed it was all about money. I always kind of felt, and I still feel actually, that you can be a broke homeless loser and you can still get with some very attractive women, okay? Because a lot of this stuff is down to, well, edge. It's down to your personal charisma, your personal magnetism, whether you're able to sexualize your interactions, you know, whether you're able to draw her into your world. That's fine for short-term mating. But anything a bit longer term, really, money does start to come into the equation. And even for the short-term stuff, if I'm being honest, money comes into the equation. And increasingly, it feels like the dating scene globally is much more transactional than it has been, okay? And obviously we have the sugar dating sites where women are, you know, actively looking for guys with money to take them out and date them and stuff. But even on regular dating sites, we've recently had reports of girls asking for, you know, financial help and financial support, even on regular dating sites from guys. So the whole thing is becoming more transactional. And even for short-term mating, if I'm being completely honest, it does seem that money plays into the equation increasingly. And I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? Because even back in the 80s, you know, the guy with the nice car, the guy who was going to all the cool parties, the guy with the cool clothes, whatever, you know, the best stereo system, whatever the fuck it was at the time, he would be the guy who was getting all the action. So none of this is particularly new news, but I think with the advent of social media, obviously it's now far more easy for women to access globally guys who have not only looks and also charisma or riz or whatever you want to call it, but also money as well. And why not go for the gold, right? Why not go for all of them? So I think money is coming increasingly into the equation. With all of that being said, and again, this is really down to social media and the smartphone and Instagram and all the rest of it. Is it actually possible, if you did end up with one of these women, a young 23-year-old woman? So I was dealing recently with a young woman, 23 years old, from Latin America originally, but also with European roots, had moved around, lived in the United States, lived in Miami for a while, red flag, and some other cities in the States, lives in Europe now. But she bounces around the whole time, okay? She travels around the whole time. If you looked at her Instagram, it looks like a veritable, travel guide to some of the hottest spots in Europe and across the world, okay? Now, obviously, you'd have to be naive to think that somebody's not helping her out a bit with that, or at least she's got a boyfriend, or she's had boyfriends who have, I say boyfriend loosely, she's had guys who sort of helps her out in that endeavour. And, I'm not casting any judgment on that. I think it's absolutely fair enough. If I was a hot young girl, I would do exactly the same thing. But the point is that when you're in this marketplace, and these women, remember, she's 23 years old, she's hot, she had a fledgling social media career where she was making money through social media. She then closed that down for various reasons, but she's getting back into it, right? The world really is the oyster of these women, okay? They are the genetic rock stars of the dating game, and the genetic rock stars, quite frankly, of the social scene as well, right? Because if you are an attractive woman, it kind of, you can get away with being socially pretty inept, okay? You can get away with a lot of social ineptitude as a young woman because people are just going to let it fly because you're attractive, okay, fine. Now, this woman, I'm not, she's actually very personable, so I'm not saying that about her, but the point is that even if, for a woman who doesn't have that charisma, who doesn't have those qualities, right, she's still going to have opportunities that the average dude just isn't going to have, okay? Now, bright, shiny new object syndrome. Okay, this is what comes into play, bright, shiny new object syndrome, because you could be dating a girl like this for a period of time, or you could, I say dating, again, very loosely, what do all these terms really mean in 2023, going into 2024, what's a situationship, what does dating really mean, it's all very kind of fuzzy, isn't it, particularly when you're in this sort of global circuit where people are dating and maybe living in different countries and they get together. And this is something that we've inhabited over the past few years, a kind of a global network of people who are traveling around and sometimes meeting up and sometimes fucking each other, and then being apart for periods of time. And it's all very sort of fuzzy and amorphous and sort of ill-defined, if you like. And the problem is that you could date a woman like that for a period of time. She likes you, she likes something about you, she likes your riz, maybe you've got an interesting lifestyle, maybe you have got some money, maybe you're able to take her on a trip to Bali or, Thailand or wherever the hell it is, and you guys have a great time together, you take her on a yacht somewhere, brilliant, you guys have sex, you're lovers for a period of time, okay? But are you actually going to be able to hold on to her if that's what you want? Increasingly, I think no. And the reason is because, frankly, she's getting plenty of other offers, some of which may seem better than yours, from other guys the whole time, okay? So there's levels to the game, aren't there? I mean, on the one hand, if you're looking for sexual opportunity, if you're looking for erotic adventures, and you've got these other attributes, and you've worked on your edge, you've worked on your game, you've worked on your social, abilities to the highest level, plus maybe you've got a bit of money, plus maybe you look decent, plus maybe, you dress well, or you go to the right places. There are a myriad of fantastic sexual opportunities out there, okay? But if you're looking for something a bit more, if you're looking for some sort of emotional sort of element to this, that is going to be difficult with these women who are in their prime. Now, of course, we know what happens as they get a little bit older, they get into the later 20s and then into the 30s and so on, and they're looking to settle down and kind of consolidate. Then, okay, obviously, at that point the game changes somewhat. This is where the so-called beta bucks comes in, where she's looking for that dude who's just going to kind of pick up the tab and support her in her marriage or relationship. She probably wants kids, right? So somebody's got to sustain that and all the rest of it. So she's looking now for the more stable guy. At that point, yes, of course, it is possible to get into something longer term. In fact, actually, most guys, or many guys who have been successful in this stuff, will know that it could. The problem can sometimes be getting out of relationships with women, because women will push the agenda when they reach that particular age quite hard, because obviously they have a very limited timeline to achieve the things that they want to achieve. So women will try to lock you down if you have value, okay? But the younger ones, not so much. And in fact, they're flitting around between Miami, between Dubai, between Europe, between the south of France, between Thailand, between Bali, all of these wonderful places. They're having a great time, and they don't really want to be locked down with one dude, okay? So even if you are watching this and you've got a Lambo and you're ripped and you've got a 12-pack and all the rest of it, like me, then it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to lock down one of these girls. And I think for myself, that has led over the years to a sort of hardening and a sort of cynicism sort of creeping in. You know, I always think of myself fundamentally as a romantic, but I think a kind of cynicism has crept in, where now I'm also not really looking for somebody to get into something longer term with either, really, because I've recognised the market for what it is. I recognise that you can enjoy the fruits of the decline, you might say, or whatever it is that's happening out there. There are benefits to that, okay? There are also benefits as a guy to being single and having one's own autonomy, okay? And there's also something quite interesting, I think, as a person with an avoidant personality type, there's something quite interesting actually about getting into relationships that are not defined and also not really based within emotion in the normal sense. Not that there's any ill will there or anything like that. These are very amicable, you know, there's a lot of affection there, but there may not be that sort of full emotion in the full sense. And there's something actually quite appealing about that if you're willing to throw yourself into the game. All right, if you're willing to just throw yourself into the melee and go, okay, this is how it is. Women are kind of extracting resources. They're going on free trips. They're, you know, being approached by many, many high-value guys, and you might be one of those guys for a period of time, and then suddenly you're not anymore, and you've just got to be okay with that. If you're willing to throw yourself into that melee, and I would say it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, you can have a lot of fun. Great. If you've still got that sort of what they might call blue pilled, you know, that kind of old sense of things of like, no, I'm just looking for this wonderful woman and we can grow together and support each other and blah blah blah. For a start, you're probably not in that top tier anyway, but if you are, you're going to be so sadly disappointed, because even if, I was talking to a friend about this earlier, even if you are the guy who's got, you know, massive resources and say you're ticking all of the boxes, you've got the money, you've got the looks, you've got the this, you've got the that, okay, and you get with her for a period of time, great, but she's also in the highest peak of demand, okay, she's in the highest peak of her value, and therefore there's always going to be another bidder on the horizon, okay, and with the very, very best will in the world, we live in a dopamine addicted society, okay, we get bored very quickly, we're always looking for the next thing. Remember, it's the TikTok generation. Is she really going to want to play happy families with you for the next, you know, for the rest of her life? Probably not. So there's always a better option out there, or at least there's always a different option out there, okay? May not be better objectively, but there's always a different option out there. And that is the problem, and that is why it is extremely hard to get into any sort of committed relationship with a woman in her prime in today's dating marketplace. Anyway, with that wonderful cheery news, I'm going to sign out now. Seems like the police are here. Maybe this content is just so spicy that they're going to take me away. So do subscribe to the channel. Get on my free email list, link below. I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.